Hello everybody, it is your friendly neighborhood movie girl, Stacia, and this week's movie is going to be the 1981 John Carpenter classic, Escape from New York. This movie was, of course, directed by John Carpenter and co-written by him and Nick Castle. And of course, John Carpenter also did the music for this movie, as he has done in most of his movies. Kurt Russell is the main star of this movie. He plays the iconic snake Pliskin, and Kurt Russell is on record stating that this is the favorite of all of his movies that he has done. Also stars Lee Van Cleef as Hawk, Ernest Borgnine as Cabby, Donald Pleasence plays the president in this, Isaac Hayes is the Duke, Susan Hurley, who was married to Kurt Russell at the time, plays the girl in Chock full of Nuts, Harry Dean Stanton plays Harold Brain Hillman, Adrienne Barbeau plays Maggie, and she was married to John Carpenter at the time that she did this movie. And this is one of those future post-apocalyptic movies. This takes place in the future of 1997. I always love it when movies that take place in the future, when that date comes along in real life, and it is absolutely nothing like the movie. It takes place in New York City on the island of Manhattan, which it actually, by and large, was actually filmed in St. Louis, Missouri. And Manhattan is a walled-off maximum security prison, basically. Breaking out is said to be impossible, and breaking in is insane, like the poster says. So some of the convicts on Manhattan Island have a plot where they actually bring down Air Force One, and the president, played by Donald Pleasence, is in that plane. He makes it out, but he is captured and they use him as a bargaining chip. And Snake Pliskin, who is actually a prisoner, is tasked with saving the president in exchange for his freedom. And yes, I have said before, dystopian futuristic movies is one of my favorite types of future movies. The more and more time goes on, I keep thinking that the dystopian future movies are the ones that possibly have the future depicted correctly. This is also the second movie that John Carpenter and Kurt Russell did together. The first one was the TV movie Elvis, in which Kurt Russell played Elvis and John Carpenter was the director. This is also the second collaboration he has done with Donald Pleasence, also Jamie Lee Curtis. Her voice is the voice of the woman you hear in the movie making all the announcements. So this was his and Jamie Lee Curtis's third collaboration. First, of course, being Halloween. Second was The Fog. And this is the third movie that they collaborated on. So Escape from New York was John Carpenter's movie after he did The Fog, and the one he did right before The Thing. Escape from New York was a huge hit at the time. It cost only about $6 million to make and made over $25 million at the box office. And John Carpenter was on quite a roll at this point. And after this, when he did The Thing, that would be his first big budget studio movie, which actually, although I think The Thing is a brilliant movie, but in 1982, when The Thing came out, it actually flopped at the box office and sort of derailed John Carpenter's commercial career. But I think the best John Carpenter is actually a more independent filmmaker, John Carpenter. And when you look or watch Escape from New York for the first time, it seems like a weird hodgepodge of characters, and you don't really know how this is going to make sense. But in the end, it is an endlessly entertaining movie made in kind of a B movie fashion that all comes together at the end and has, if you watch it now, if you watched it originally when you're a little kid, you might not have gotten the meaning behind the movie. It was something that John Carpenter wrote in the 73, 74, 75 time frame, and it was during Watergate that he wrote it, and a very dark sense of the government at that time and what they thought was going to be a dystopian future really makes sense in this day and age also. But it is kind of like, you know, a weird hodgepodge of characters that works in the end, and its underlying message is told very clearly. Like other John Carpenter movies, there almost always is a underlying political kind of message in them. And yes, let me bring up Siskel and Ebert again, how they saw this film. Roger Ebert was kind of middling about the movie. He liked the craftsmanship and was intrigued by the storytelling and the craftsmanship of John Carpenter, but thought the movie was just so-so, that it delved into more of caricatures and cartooniness. Gene Siskel loved the movie, gave it a thumbs up, and said that was the point of it. It is supposed to be cartoony and caricatures and have a message at the end. So he really enjoyed the movie, where Ebert just thought it was just so-so. And I focus on Siskel and Ebert's reviews, especially for movies of this time. Siskel and Ebert were kind of a cultural phenomenon during that time. Critics on television, their show on PBS, and who doesn't know thumbs up and thumbs down because of the two of them. And they were kind of icons of movie critics at that time. So it's two people that oftentimes had differing views of the movies and what they thought of them, and such a cultural touchstone between those two that a lot of people are familiar with their works, at least their TV personas. They're probably less familiar with their actual critical writings in the newspapers that they wrote movie reviews for. And in this case, yes, I agree with Gene Siskel on this review. The characters and the cartoonishness of this movie is kind of the point, and what was being, you know, what John Carpenter wanted to have, that sort of in of being these exaggerated characters while making a statement with this movie. And I really think it holds up today because of kind of the state the country's in, much like the time that he wrote the movie. America was in turmoil, and we seem to be politically in turmoil much the same way nowadays. And just so you know, as iconic as Kurt Russell is as Snake Plissken, and in a lot of the movies we know him for now, at this point, he was seen as a Disney actor. He was a child actor who did a lot of Disney films. Famously, you know, was in a movie with Elvis, and he played Elvis. The Elvis movie that he was in with John Carpenter was a TV movie, and that was really one of his breakouts, showing people he could be more than a Disney actor. But the studio didn't want Kurt Russell because of that. They actually wanted Tommy Lee Jones as the character of Snake Plissken. As iconic as Tommy Lee Jones is, at this point, I can't imagine anybody else playing Snake Pliskin other than Kurt Russell, who ironically I've heard like he kept all of his costumes from this movie and for a large part of his life still fit in them. I don't know if he still fits in them today, but I know around 20 years after the movie came out, he was able to still fit in the clothes. And if you ever see Escape from LA, the sequel to this movie that came out years later, he wears some of the same costumes in that movie. And the reason why this movie was shot in St. Louis is because it was so much cheaper to shoot in St. Louis. And St. Louis like made it easy for them. Shut off power for several days to shoot scenes in some neighborhoods. He was able to buy a bridge in the St. Louis area for $1 from the government. He sold that bridge back when the filming was done, but it's a lot harder to film in New York. I mean, some scenes are filmed in New York where they couldn't sub iconic places like the Statue of Liberty, but like 90% of this movie is St. Louis. So just think of that. This is New York of St. Louis. And a lot of these locations can still be gone to in the city of St. Louis if you ever want to take a tour of the filming locations of Escape from New York. But when this movie opened, it opened with a $9 million opening box office weekend, which was huge. So basically, it made back, plus a little bit more, its whole filming budget. And yes, John Carpenter was inspired by 1970s New York City, which was a much seedier and crime-ridden place than it is now. I know we see a lot in media now that the crime is out of control in New York City, but it's funny because the perception of New York City in the 70s and 80s and the crime rate then was so much worse than it is now. So if you've never seen Escape from New York and you're a huge movie fan and like genre movies, definitely Escape from New York should be on your list as one to watch. You will love it. Just keep in mind when you watch, like I've said before, when you watch movies that were made in the 70s, 80s, especially if they are on the sci-fi or futuristic sort of genre, just keep that in mind. It is a period piece within a period piece if you're watching it now. Again, my name is Stacia, and I just love movies. I've been studying them for most of my life, and this is my little corner of the internet where I get to talk about it, and I love sharing it with other people. And my favorite part is when people comment on these movies. Tell me the first time you've seen Escape from New York. Tell me what you thought of it, what impact on you. If you love this movie, let me know. If you hate this movie, let me know as well, because I enjoy the people that absolutely don't like, some of these popular movies that they're like, I thought it was trash from the beginning, which I think is an interesting take. So let me know. I'd like to hear it all. So, and if you don't know, I'm trying to get to 300 subscribers. I think my goal for this year is to try to get to 500 subscribers and then see where we go from, years past this. But I do this as a hobby because I just love talking about movies, and I love being able to interact with other people that love movies as well. But I would love you to join and subscribe and leave me a comment or like the video and give me some encouragement. But, I do this just out of the joy of loving movies. So if you want to subscribe, but I'll just keep doing this just because I love to. But I will see you guys next time. As always, love you. Bye.